A couple of years ago, I was at a conference in Dallas, Texas, and one afternoon we had a couple-hour break, and so a friend of mine who had rented a car suggested that we jump in and go find a coffee shop and visit for a while, so that's what we did. We eventually found a Starbucks and went inside and started chatting, and as we were visiting, I noticed this older man staring at us. He seemed very intent on what we were talking about, and he kept sliding closer and closer to our table. Eventually he said, "I hear you're talking about the Bible." And I said, "I guess so, yeah, we might have been, I don't know." And he says, "Well, I've got some things that I believe that I want to tell you." Okay. So he said, "Did you know that the sun orbits the earth?" I said, "Excuse me?" He says, "Yeah, the ancient people were right. The sun orbits the earth. The earth doesn't orbit the sun. That's just ridiculous. Scientists are wrong." I said, "All right." Then he said, "Did you also know that we have never been to the moon? That moon landing thing was completely fake. In fact, we've never even been to space. Man has never left the earth." And I said, "Okay." Then he went on to give us a little speech about how the government couldn't collect income tax, that was wrong and illegal and they shouldn't be allowed to collect income tax. All right, I'd heard all those ones before, but then he came up with a new one. He said that he'd created a new way to measure the earth, and a new system of latitude and longitude that measured the earth, and he could tell us, just from his new system, exact distances between cities. And so he wanted to know where we were from so that he could tell us how far that was from Dallas, Texas. As I'm standing there thinking about this, my friend Paul opens his mouth and gives the man an address. But he gave him my address. I looked at my friend and thought, "What are you doing? You're giving this crazy person my address?" But that's what happened. So the man told me how far we were from Estevan, Saskatchewan when we were in Dallas, Texas. Eventually we had to leave, and so we kind of extracted ourselves from the situation, said goodbye to the guy and left. But I've never forgotten this man because it was such an odd experience. That he just believed what he believed because he believed it, and that was it. Didn't matter what anybody else said, didn't matter what science said, didn't matter what was true or not true. He just believed he was right because he thought he was right, and that's all he needed. That seems strange in that situation, but I've encountered that lots of times when it comes to spiritual things. I've heard lots of people say, "I don't think God would," or "I don't think God could," or "My God isn't like that." In other words, they have a belief that if they can't imagine God being a way that is contradictory to what they would like, then it can't be true. It's partially because we put an emphasis on having a personal relationship with God, and I think that's really a good thing. You need a relationship that is your own. You can't ride on your church's relationship with God or your parents' relationship or anything else. But that doesn't mean you get to decide what God is like. We need an objective way of knowing God, not just what I think, but we need something that reveals God to us. And that's why the Word is important. I believe that the Bible is God's word to men, not men's words about God. I don't think this is just our best guesses written down. I actually believe that this was given to us by God to tell us who He is. And we need to read the Word and understand the Word so that we know the God we are serving. We need to get to know Him so we're not just making a God up that sounds good to me. Psalm 119 is one of the longest psalms in the entire book. In fact, it's 176 verses long, and those 176 verses in Psalm 119 are basically dedicated to the gift of the Word. It starts this way and says, "Blessed are they whose ways are blameless, who walk according to the law of the Lord. Blessed are they who keep His statutes, who seek Him with all their heart." That's how the psalm begins, and then as I said, it's 176 verses talking about how important it is to know the Word and let the Word guide us and help us, and how it teaches us about God and what we ought to be and do, and what is holy and unholy, and the whole thing is wrapped up with teaching us about God. You may want to go read that. There is a section in here that you might already know, though. The 105th verse says this: "Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." If we allow this book to guide us, if we allow this to tell us about God, then it will be like a lamp in the darkness. It will help guide us and show us the path. What I think really doesn't matter. What you think about God really doesn't matter. What God says about himself is what matters. So can we take the time to spend some time in this book so that we are guided to him by his word, so that we actually know God and not just a God we've made up?